my daughter got taken by CPS and I want to get her back. Okay, that's valuable to me as a therapist, right? Because now I know what your motivations are. But that's irrelevant. I don't write to the insurance and go, hey, I want to diagnose this guy as a methamphetamine addict, but he doesn't feel any remorse.
Well, or,
so I guess he's fine.
Or, I guess the reason why somebody wanted to quit, it doesn't have to make sense. What we look at is, have they attempted and were they able to stick with it? So
Right.
if I'm an alcoholic and let's say my reason for wanting to quit is just crazy and stupid. I want to quit drinking because all of my favorite NASCAR drivers, when they are sponsored by an alcohol company, their careers fall apart and I always
Right.
get
It's
disappointed
just a
because they never win
superstition.
the cup.
Right.
Whatever
right.
the reason is, it doesn't matter. It would
irrelevant.
be, I want to quit, but I can't
quit. Yeah, and that's the key. And so, like, this is why I brought this article up, because A, he's a published author. He ought to know better. He's a clinical psychologist. But this goes back to how little training everybody has in addiction. And it really bugs me, because they're misunderstanding that if this guy had said that exact same article and said there's no such thing as alcohol addiction, there's no such thing as alcoholism, because I have found correlation that religious people feel worse about drinking than non-religious people. That would be laughed out of the academy. Like, I mean, your scholarship card would be revoked. You'd be disinvited from every conference. But he gets away with it when we're talking about sex, because it's this nebulous void. Like, if you did the same thing about gambling. If you said there's no such thing about gambling addiction, there's no such thing, because religious people, they feel worse about it when they go home. Okay, because
Right.
in Islam, it teaches you're not allowed to gamble, so they feel worse about it. That's irrelevant to the diagnosis. So really quick, can you kind of recap because again, this is your specialty, right? Addiction is the thing. But the criteria that you're looking for, Nick, you're not necessarily looking for, do they feel sad about what they did? Like, that's meaningful to you, but that's not
Sure.
how you diagnose addiction.
Right. No, I mean, there's 11 different criteria. Continued use despite negative consequences. There is
Like
tolerance,
a craving cycle.
Tolerance. There's withdrawal symptoms. There's previous failed attempts to cut down or quit. So,
Which is huge.
Preoccupation. So
Yeah,
this
fantasizing,
is like,
obsession.
Yeah, your mind is always on it. So if you're not using, you're thinking about it or planning it
Right.
or doing all that. It consumes your day.
Not one of that cites the Bible.
right.
Like says, and if you
Or-
are in disobedience of the second commandment, then
Right.
maybe you're an addict. Like, that has nothing to do with it. But, like, part of this debate that I think is really meaningful, and Dr. Lay, takes an issue with this, is that the World Health Organization and the ICD-11, so for those who don't know, there's the DSM-5, right, which is like the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for psychology, right? So we call it the Psychology Bible. It's kind of the database that we look to diagnose. There's also something called the ICD. The ICD is like the international code set that is sort of used throughout all of medicine. So if you break your arm and you go to your doctor has to report to the insurance what it is they're there helping you with, and they'll find a code in the ICD codes, which ICD-10 is the current edition, that says broken arm. Mm-hmm. And so then they'll give that to the insurance, and then the insurance looks at it and says, oh, G13, okay, broken arm. So there are codes that have to do with mental health and behavioral health, usually F codes. And in the next iteration of the ICD, version 11, it's going to have in there compulsive sexual behavior disorder. And this was at the firm suggestion of the World Health Organization, who believes that this is something that needs to be looked at. And Dr. Lay takes huge issue with this, as are a lot of sex advocates, and saying, oh my gosh, you're pathologizing sex. You're making sex a disease. The fact that somebody has a very healthy sexual appetite is not a disease. And again, this is like the marijuana lobby saying, oh, you're pathologizing marijuana use, or the alcohol lobby saying you're pathologizing alcohol. It's not that. We don't have a problem with that.
And you can make the same argument for food.
Right.
Your anorexia nervosa. Like,
Right.
are you pathologizing that I just don't like you very much?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Are you body shaming me? And it's
Right.
like, no, that there has to be not just clinically significant distress, but these other criteria that we sort of used to indicate it's now compulsive, which has a psychological definition to it. It's outside of your ability to control. Therefore, it's okay for us to treat it with psychology, right? So that's where Dr. Lay and I have a huge disagreement, besides the fact I don't think he has a concept of what addiction is. To me, another argument against his report here is he says, oh, religiosity, and the study was done in America. The World Health Organization believes that it's an addiction. And if you go through the world, yeah, you'll find Christianity and other religions, but Europe and different sectors of Europe are like very much atheist, and like that's very much in vogue in a lot of places. Or very secular, and right. They, not all forms of medicine have some puritanical, like, Utah kind of mentality to it. And so, again, I just really disagree with Dr. Lay. I think he's way off base. There's been this huge debate, and we've mentioned this in a previous show, but the big, huge sides of the debate are the APA on one side, which is the American Psychological Association, and ASECT on the other, which is the American Association of Sexologists, Educators, Sex Therapists, and Advocates. And the ASECT team basically says, listen, do not pathologize sex, never talk about sex in a negative way. There is no such thing as sex addiction. There's no such thing as porn addiction. And the APA and NADAC, by the way, which is the Association of Addiction Professionals, and the WHO, the World Health Organization, all look at them and go, guys, it is. It is a thing, just like gambling addiction's a thing. There's such thing as process addictions. And Nick, you've spelled out very carefully on a show about the dopamine cycle in the brain. We're talking about how the brain rewires. It's not about morality. It's not about pathologizing. It's just about the compulsive and obsessive nature of a disease, which is a brain link that we call addiction. And that can happen. Whether you're addicted to sniffing glue or you're addicted to porn, it can happen. It can be beyond your ability to stop it.
Right. And the thing that, I think I brought this up before in the example when talking about video game addiction. And the problem with studying video game addiction is because there's no specific agreed upon diagnosis.
Right.
Yeah. There's no formal diagnosis. So it becomes very difficult when you study it, because then you have to try to figure out, well, what, this research right here is showing this result. Well, what did they use to determine that this population meets criteria?
Right.
So for the most part, we just use the substance use disorder criteria for other process addictions.
Yeah.
And you could make an argument that maybe those don't fit 100%, or they don't fit completely well. For example, like with gambling, I mean, there's some criteria that don't really fit really well with gambling use, such as like withdrawal symptoms.
Yeah.
So there's some kind of psychological stuff, but it doesn't it doesn't fit. It's not a good fit for it.
But nobody disputes that there is such a thing as compulsive gambling.
Right.
Or even video game. Like, I have a big problem with this. Like, I'm always asked, like, is my son or daughter addicted to video games? And I'm usually the guy dragging my feet and going, I don't like that. Like, I don't like pathologizing a kid recreating and playing, because we don't say, is he addicted to playing jacks, or was he addicted to Pokemon, like back in the day? But now that it's on a TV screen, we're pathologizing it. And I'm kind of bothered by that. But again, we can apply the criteria of addiction to almost anything. Food, video games, gambling, sex, pornography. And all of these habits are healthy in context, but can be taken to a place where the person experiences not just clinical distress, but negative consequences, and they cannot stop despite that. If you're losing your marriage, losing your job, or going to jail, if you're Jared the Subway guy, and you compulsively used pornography and went down a rabbit hole to the point where you were starting to view illegal things, and you couldn't stop despite negative consequences, yeah, I think we're allowed to treat you. That's not to excuse his behavior, but it is to say the man seriously needed help. But, if Dr. Lay had his way, we'd all go, nope, he's just another healthy sexual guy in the world. And it's like, man, at some point you have to take stock of the consequences of their actions. If they can't stop or cut back, they need help. And if they're asking for help, we should give it to them.
And I think a big criteria, too, that we look at is, just setting limits.
Right.
And not being able to stick to them.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one, too. So you can see that in porn, where people are like, yes, I look at porn, but only at home.
Right.
And then the next thing they know, they're at work.
Right. Because that's what alcoholics will do. They'll make deals. Right. They'll go, okay, no more liquor, or okay, only socially, or okay, never when I'm sad, or okay, never past a certain time, or okay, always with food. But it doesn't matter. If you keep breaking your own boundaries, it comes back to this problem. And if it's a problem cycle, it deserves to be treated. So, Dr. Lay, respectfully, the World Health Organization disagrees with you, the APA disagrees with you, NADAC disagrees with you, and so does Pod Therapy. Boom.
Shots fired.
Shots fired, Lay.
So, come on to the show.
No, don't. We're literally in my sex dungeon right now. This would not be the place. I'm gonna be indicted on this guy. No way.
All right. Well, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we will look at some work tips. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
Hey, listeners, do you hate ads in podcasts?
No.
Not anymore, because we have a new Patreon. Go to patreon.com/therapy, and you can sign up to sponsor the show. We have opened only 8 slots for people that get the coveted right to sponsor the show, and you can become a Thera-producer. And so what that means is that you'll be able to give us something to read on air during these breaks, or you could leave a message and actually we'll play your voice on the show. We need you guys. We want this to be a show that's listener-driven, listener-sponsored, and each of you probably has a message of hope and support that others really need to hear. So go to patreon.com/therapy and consider signing up as a $1 a month TheraPal, as a $5 a month TheraPod, which is a lot of fun. You get a cool dinosaur head, or as a $20 a month producer. Whatever's right for you guys. We want to thank you for being listeners. Thank you for joining our fan club, and thank you for contributing to the hope and the meaningful rapport that this show hopes to generate. We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy, and our next question is from somebody who discovered their sister is anorexic and proud of it. Okay, this one is titled, I discovered my sister is pro-Anna through her Instagram page. What can I do? For those who don't know, pro-Anna means a person believes anorexia is a valid lifestyle choice. I knew my sister was skinny. She looked like a supermodel and weighed less than me. Family and she claim it's just genetics, so I thought it was. Sorry if my thoughts are a little jumbled, but I'm really worried. Recently I made an Instagram account and I was scrolling through some pages on Discover. I found this picture of someone's thigh gap and looked through the page. This page has 2.7 thousand followers, and it was all photos of the person's thighs, stomach, shoulders. Then I spotted a very distinct jewelry case in one of the backgrounds of a picture. The jewelry case cost up to thousands and seems extremely familiar. I dug through her page and found more objects that are identical to my sister's belongings. I'm 99% sure it's her, but I don't know how to confront and help her. My family's supportive of her because that's how skinny Asian girls are, but her bio says her goal weight is only 40 kilograms, which is way too light for her height. How can I help her? What should I even do?
Okay, well, I'm going to be the stupid American. What's 40 kilograms?
Oh, man. You are asking the wrong guy. I got nothing.
Hold on, listeners. We got to look this up.
Let's ask our friend in Brazil. I think they use the metric system. Actually, I think everybody uses the metric system except for us.
Isn't that like 85 pounds?
All right, I'm going to let Nick look that up. Okay. But I think that a couple of things are really interesting here. A, Nick and I have no clue how to use the metric system. B, we have an Instagram for Pod Therapy. It has 4 followers. We have never posted anything.
We don't even have a profile picture.
It's terrible. So we're way out of our league on this. But no, I will speak to this while you're looking it up, because I am curious as to exactly how much 40 kilogram is. But I was a high school teacher for a number of years, for about 8 years. And I remember I had a young lady who I think she was a student of mine when she was a sophomore, and I had her all the way till she graduated. And each year she got really, really skinnier, and it became skeletal and something that I had really noticed and become worried about. And at the time I was doing grad school, and I got a hold of her sister, who was just a few years younger than her, and we chatted about it, and her sister said, I'm really worried about her. This is something that, has really caught my eye too. It's way, less than I think she should be. And then the sister came to me one day and told me something very similar to what this article says, what this writer wrote. She basically said, listen, I found out that she's pro-Anna. And at the time I didn't know what that was, but the sister explained, like, pro-anorexia. Like, anorexia is a lifestyle choice, like a valid one. And lots of other women and men support this and are like encouraging. And it's like what that person just said in the Instagram, that they have 2,500 followers and lots of people are like, yeah, you go, you're doing awesome. And it's like a movement. And I remember talking to the girl who actually was anorexic and discussing it with her. And I asked her, like, do you know what anorexia is? And I thought I was going to explain it to her, but she explained it to me. She was like, oh yeah, no, I know exactly what it is. Here's how I do it. And I was like, oh, and Nick, it's a profound thing to think about, right? Because she was under 18, so I got her parents involved. We talked about it. Her hair was falling out. It was getting so bad. And she was just really, really unhealthy. And it was very difficult to talk to her